Welcome back to day 4 of 50 Days to Rebuild, the series where I do 50 pages of my physio books and 50 minutes of exercise each day. So looking first at the exercises I ran through, of course doing the big L, big 3, but really trying to focus here on the side plank. So I've regressed back, so I'm no longer doing the twist with it, just because it was looking like a disjointed movement. We weren't getting that like integrated connection through shoulder to hip. I'm not minding this, it's feeling a bit better. I'm still noticing what looks like a bit of winging, especially when I come down from the side plank. But in general, I think this slight cue change that I discussed last episode, it's looking better, it's feeling a bit better. Also, the curl up and the bird dog going just fine, so really happy with that. Moving on from there, went to the band pull aparts, really just trying to work on my rhomboids. This is where I'm starting to get a little bit of progress, which is nice to see. So I've been trying to do this serratus wall slide exercise since yesterday, and it's giving me like a bit of an idea around the difference in how I should cue it, and also from my reading of anatomy trains, giving me some confidence in the fact that retraction does involve elevation. So sort of taking myself through that protraction and upward rotation range and then coming back into retraction gave me more of a sensation, I guess, that I'm going almost like through a wave, that this is what the actual full range of protraction through retraction would look like. And again, didn't feel perfect, but I liked how that relationship felt. I also continued to work on this serratus exercise, gliding the foam roller up the wall. What I'm actually finding more success in is just something that I've sort of thought of myself, which is trying to do this upward rotation just with nothing on the wall, just my own arm, just to get a sense of what that is like, and then mixing protraction and then eventually external rotation into that, and also that sense of wrapping around the body. That seems like it's the better way to sort of practice this movement, because I was struggling to keep the forearms vertical. And then once adding external rotation there, we add in that ability to actually maintain the vertical forearm, which is cool. Following on from that, just tried to do some work for my lower leg and particularly my ankle. This is something that I've worked on for a long time because I've had a lot of ankle rolls where I've just eviscerated some of the lateral tissues, especially on my right side. I've had a lot of success with this in the past, but I've only recently just started this sort of exercise where I'm trying to invert and then enter plantar flexion and dorsiflexion, and then evert and enter plantar and dorsiflexion. What I'm finding, the left side's pretty much good, but the right side's hurting, so having to do the inversion side first to almost get like a stretch through that lateral area that I've definitely torn in the past. And then still having issues, so I actually started massaging through that where it was hurting, discovered that this was really just the peroneal, like the deep peroneal, so the inferior, or fibularis, whatever you want to call it, just struggling to fire, almost like it's got adhesions in it, which makes sense, because it's particularly hurting during plantar flexed eversion, which is 100% what that muscle is responsible for. So massaging that a bit was I would actually get more range without the cracking and pain that was happening before. So I think that's a really good indicator that that's something we should keep doing. In terms of why I'm doing this exercise, again, I've rolled my foot just continuously. I've just abused my ankle. So I really just wanted to get a lot of strength through range. I think that particularly having like that the inverted plantar flexion range, sort of saying, yeah, I could enter an ankle roll, but I've already strengthened that range. It's not going to be the end of the world. And then eversion with dorsiflexion is like, we're not even going to enter that range. We're going to prevent ever falling there. Now, I actually had some difficulties doing these exercises, but as you can see, I've really got in here with a yoga tune-up ball and just tried to massage out that peroneal brevis, and getting into there and then really squeezing through that muscle when I was exercising afterwards really helped, and I stopped cracking. It felt great. In terms of the anatomy trains, I'm excited to say we've done all of the lines. Burned through that. Who would have thought 50 pages a day will do that? Coolest thing by far learned yesterday was to do with neutral spine and sitting. So we got into this section around sitting, and I was excited because sitting hurts me a lot, and I know it's like just this horrible thing for us. But he ran through this, you could call it an exercise, but it's more like just movement knowledge, which was sitting on the edge of a seat on your ischial tuberosities, so your sit bones, and then sort of letting the body just sort of come forward, and just like allowing the neck to surrender into flexion from this fully flexed point, coming back into full extension, but starting the movement from the pelvis, and then not trying to generate any movement from the neck, but just feeling the natural wave or domino up as it comes up through the spine, and then your head and neck and enter like a more extended posture. And then doing the same thing, so trying to flex from the pelvis, do posterior, anterior tilt, and just allowing that cascade up and down the spine a few times. And then, once you've done that a few times, you feel sort of familiar with that range. It was semi-painful, but it was okay. Coming up till, via this pelvis tilt, till the eyes were horizontal. This was absolutely perfect. I have tried for a very, very long time to have a neutral spine. I felt like I had some success with it, but one of the things I've been trying to do recently, or semi-recently, is to have my neck posture be better. So it's like a tall neck, kind of forward, not a head forward, but sort of trying to cue forward a little bit is how I was told to do this. And even though that's almost right, it's like really tensioned. It doesn't feel natural. But this movement of the pelvis, I felt light. And I can't emphasize enough, that is not a way I normally feel. So that the idea of the muscles being draped, for a moment, like I was aware of what that actually meant. And then tried to walk, very difficult for me to maintain. It's quite new, especially with any sort of brace. But I could feel that if I could just change it a little bit via this pelvis movement, I would just find neutral and everything would flow better from there. Maybe the coolest thing from that was actually trying to sleep last night, which is normally a rather painful process. I normally don't sleep with a pillow because of neck pain. I've sort of experimented recently with like a heat pack or something under, but nothing really seems to work too well. I think because I end up kind of slumped. I do have a like lumbar pad that I've just started sleeping with under there, previously a little towel, and normally I wouldn't have it very inflated, but I realized I was kind of having my neck looking down, like it wasn't horizontal. And I was like, well, how can I anteriorly tilt my pelvis? I can try, but I just naturally sort of get forced back down with gravity. So I inflated this lumbar pad more, which basically anteriorly tilted my pelvis, or got it closer to neutral. Lo and behold, my neck comes up, it doesn't feel as painful. I had one of the best sleeps ever last night. So that was bloody awesome. Beyond that, also learned about the stretch shortening cycle, which is something that I'm admittedly rather late to. Something I hear a lot about, but actually really don't know what it is. Basically, it was just saying that we pre-tension something and then allow it to re-extend. This is sort of an elastic process, and it's far more efficient than trying to contract, which is metabolic. The way that this was explained in the book was almost like being on a trampoline, that you jump down and then the springs would get more and more tension, and once they reach their tension point, they sort of snap back, and that's not really requiring energy on our behalf, but it's going to generate movement, and that makes a lot of sense to me, and I can see why that would be a better way of moving. I'm still not really too sure on how to train that sort of elastic movement, because my fear is always like, well, if I can't do it slow, can I do it quick? But I can see the value in having that elastic ability. Also ran through a bit of a sequence around rolling. I found this kind of interesting. It was nice to get some movement in those ranges. It didn't feel perfect or painless completely, but I was trying to get it as painless as possible. The idea that was sort of expressed is that if you move through some of the developmental postures, things will improve. I would say the book sort of skipped through a lot of those developmental steps. Like I've seen a lot of the developmental neuromuscular stabilization work, and there's lots of different steps. This had like 4 or 5, and it really explained how to do one. But I could see that it might be something I should actually look into, because actually did feel quite nice to roll. And I guess they were arguing that if you skip any of these steps, some of these higher level movements will be hard. The example they gave was just like an anecdotal story of someone saying like, why can't I train Balinese men to hop from one leg to another, even though they seem to be like really mobile and coordinated and like can dance. And they were basically saying there's like a cultural idea of like, don't put them down for like the first 7 months. So they're sort of losing this like creeping ability that they would normally be going through in development. Whether or not that's true, I don't know, but I see the argument here, which is like, work on some of these developmental stages and it might flow on to fix these other issues. So I think I did find like the general movement fixing approach described in the book, saying that if there's laxity there, we want to strengthen not just that muscle but the whole line, and if there's tension, we want to release not just that whole muscle but the whole line. That seems to be the underlying philosophy behind how to address these issues. There were some explanations given around how to actually go about doing this. I will say it was quite limited and a lot of reference to, going to another course or book, but I think generally I might be able to look towards like Jill Miller's work and actually just figure that out. I think she covers that stuff quite well, and she has worked with this author around how to actually roll along those lines. So it was okay. For the most part, a lot of it seemed like very stretch heavy, which is a really difficult contradiction in my mind, because I pushed stretching to what I thought was a logical conclusion and I hurt myself. And I was stretching like 6 times a day, or up to 6 times a day, and I kind of needed to not be in pain. So I don't know how good it is, but also I don't think I used to stretch right. So I'm open to trying something new, but I'm also probably going to stick a little bit to some of my comfort zone of massage. But yeah, that's about it for day 4. Again, it's been pretty hard to get through all of these pages, but we're getting it done. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.